RadeTwo here. This is my freshly level 80 Slayer two-handed sword guy. It's hard to be too much more specific as you can pretty much do absolutely whatever you want with him. You can use... I'm limiting myself to red gems because I'm using Doomsower, but you can use any red gem in the entire game. I'm myself using Infernal Blow. And I'm going to show you what that looks like with this rare glacier map. Just an Alkengo. So this is a very low tier map, and it'll go really smoothly and easily. So my entire bar is full of buttons to press. So many buttons. So all you do with this character is you just fly around really fast, and you swing your sword once, and the entire screen just spontaneously explodes with a big, great thunk. You have to have screen shake on. That is obligatory. The main reason that I'm using Infernal Blow over most any other melee gem is these right here, the Timeless Monoliths. If you haven't seen Incursion yet, or Incursion, Legion? If you haven't seen Legion yet, what's going to happen is when I tag this, a flash of lightning is going to illuminate the area, and there's going to be all these dudes frozen in ice. And if I kill them, which procs the explosion effect of Infernal Blow, if I kill them, then they're going to unfreeze. And then once the time-limited period is over, everybody all at once is going to reanimate whom I tagged and unfroze, and I'm going to have to fight them all. So this is where it is quite handy to have Vol Molten Shell for. You can see it's going to absorb 26,000 damage off the top of my health. Oh, I forgot to hit Blood Rage beforehand. So yeah. Oh. That's what happens if you don't have your defensive stuff up. So it is quite satisfying to just fly around really quickly and slam everything and they just explode. So that's why I'm using Tectonic Slam. Though I did prepare a few others to show you that are pretty funny. So with Infernal Blow, as it's a strike attack, you can see that in the tags just below Infernal Blow. It does work best with Melee Splash and Ancestral Call. The rest of these are more traditional AoE effects, so what you're going to want to do is socket Pulverize, which has nearly as much AoE as an increased area of effect support, a small less attack speed modifier, and a massive more melee area damage modifier. And then added fire damage. So first there has to be mobs. The helicopter build is alive and well. And it does get slightly larger as I clear because of the Slayer Ascendancy. Then otherwise from sweep we do have Ice Crash. Evergreen favorite. Which is pretty nice. It has really big AoE and pretty nice damage. Especially against bosses because it gets that little bit extra in the center. And Tectonic Slam, I haven't seen much of this. since it's a mini rework, but those invisible stars. But especially if you're consuming endurance charges, it has some massive AoE and pretty acceptable damage. I'm using low-level gems, so these are doing under par. And I'm not leeching any mana because of it. It's unfortunate. And then if you use Infernal Blow, they just explode of their own volition. So that was an overlong demo of the character. To give you a brief rundown of my gear, I am using Doom Sower as my melee weapon. So it's effectively, between the area of effect and the gained is fire damage, it's basically an extra link. And it's a very solid base PDPS sword. So you have a high PDPS sword that's a 6 link if you 5 link it. And it costs 2 chaos at best. Sometimes you'll get it for 1. So this is a really solid choice. It also has that plus 500 to accuracy rating as the implicit. And so I have more than enough accuracy. 3,000 flat. It takes about 2090 to hit every single enemy in the game, even at the highest level, even if they're evasive. Pretty standard armor gear. Evasion armor. Evasion armor. Belly of the Beast. And some really trash jewelry. This needs a lot more flat fizz on it if I really wanted to scale my damage. One thing to note is I am so starved on sockets, and especially red sockets, that I do have an unset ring with my stone golem in here. So your main attacks are going to be Infernal Blow, Ancestral Call, and Melee Splash. And then I've played around with a few different damage supports. Edwa is going to be great because it also scales your final corpse explosion detonation thing. Melee physical damage is going to be the single highest damage multiplier you can get out there. But I wonder if close combat support isn't an ideal choice, if nothing else than for the 6th link. It seems to put up really good damage numbers in practice, if not in theory, and I do see quite a few on the leaderboard using close combat. Then for my auras, I have War Banner, Herald of Ash, Flesh and Stone linked to Maim. So these are all my basic damage amps. The War Banner gives me increased fizz damage. The Flesh and Stone gives me permanent Maim, and then in theory I could switch it over to the defensive form, but I rarely do. And then Herald of Ash, ever since they changed it, it now... Or I'm sorry, that's with the other build. Herald of Ash is just the best bang for your buck in terms of mana reserved for damage. I also have another aura I'm running, a level 1 Precision, because it gives me that hardy 40% increased critical strike chance for only 22 mana reserved, which is nothing, it's negligible. I have a cast when damage taken set up linked to Punishment to give me just a tiny bit of extra damage, because curses, traditional offensive curses, don't give me too much. You may want to switch this out to an Enfeeble if you're paranoid. And then I do have a Blood Rage I'm using to generate Frenzy charges and to offer a little bit of physical leech that I'm lacking. I have my Molten Shell, Evolve Molten Shell, linked to increased duration support, so I have a little bit over 50% uptime. It lasts nearly 5 seconds, and it has a 4-second cooldown. So I can keep this Molten Shell up most of the time, and if I really need to, if I'm fighting a boss or something, it'll last nearly 15 seconds in the Vol version. And that's more than enough to kill anything. And then additionally, I do have a Vengeance, a little counterattack linked to life gain on support just for a little extra passive bit of health regen. Finally, this is actually one of the more important parts of playing a melee character now, it turns out. You link Leap Slam to faster attacks and Fortify, just like before. But this latest patch added damaging hits always stun enemies that are on full life. So it makes it a perfect case for endurance charge on melee stun support. Every time you slam into a new pack, you're going to generate an endurance charge. And those add up. That's a lot of physical damage reduction in addition to your armor that you're laying down with your Molten Shell. So you can mitigate a whole lot of damage just off some relatively passive, just one button press with the Molten Shell on top of your normal flasks and your normal Leap Slam action. The tree is a generic Slayer tree, and I know I always say my trees are generic, but really, this is the heat map of every hardcore Slayer that isn't using Cyclone or a bow, and it's the exact same thing as my tree. This is the build that I shamelessly stole everything out of. Thank you, Ralphlock, for making the one Infernal blow character on the entire ladder that I could copy off of. It's almost identical to tree. And so, yeah, important details to note are the 3000 accuracy against a level 84 enemy with evasion. It's going to hit, flat out, always. The area of effect is very substantial when you add up all the increased area from the tree. You have area here, a little bit of area here. You have an entire melee AoE cluster here with more range. And you get range here, and you get range here. And you get range here. And most importantly, you get the Slayer area of effect node, where you get that +2 to range and 5% area of effect per enemy killed recently, up to 50%. So that's an entire increased area of effect support, just as part of your Ascendancy. And it's so easy to cap that out as you're running along clearing, so the area of effect is quite substantial. And then the other trick is the other new node with Slayer that makes this all really viable is Overwhelm. So it says base critical strike chance for attacks with weapons is 8%. Doomsower only has a base critical strike chance of 5%, which is pretty pitiful and generally non-viable for any kind of crit build. But by taking that Ascendancy node and just overriding that from 8 to 5%, you gain 16% effective critical strike chance, going from a quarter to almost 50% of your hits are going to crit. So that is absolutely enormous. That enables you to play a crit build with basically any weapon in the game. It's pretty hilarious. And then swords specifically have very, very good... right here. Swords specifically have good crit nodes. And a ton of accuracy, more importantly, available on the entire tree. So the traditional downside of crit is you rely heavily on accuracy. Not so when all of your sword nodes give you just free, perfect accuracy. Perfect, resolute technique just for playing the character, basically. It's pretty incredible. With all the buffs up, I have 43,000 armor, which is nice. It's not enough to block anything in the game, but between all my physical mitigations, I can take a 10,000 damage hit and knock it down by a total of 64%, as long as I have everything up. So that takes a big slam from a boss into something tankable. And if I take off this override, if we use the default damage values, a normal hit from a level 84 enemy is 1,200, and that's just completely negated. So armor fulfills its niche of wiping out those small and medium-sized hits and giving you a little bit of breathing room on the very large hits. My DPS isn't insane, although do note that this doesn't include the stacking explosion effects on Infernal Blow. So really, this is about 66% increased over this value. But it's obviously when you're critting, when you're slamming those packs, and when everything chain explosions, it's more than enough to clear comfortably in most content in the game. And by the time that you're doing truly endgame content, you wouldn't be using Doomsower, you'd be using a crafted rare sword like this. Or you'd be using just a Starforge. Probably triple my damage if I just threw one on. Oh, it's all my damage is fire, so that's showing up as negative. But yeah, Starforge would be a substantial increase in damage, and you get to turn Starforge into a crit weapon. Slayer is a ridiculous class. And then, of course, because my build's weakness isn't defense, which normally you'd make up for with leeching, my build's weakness is being able to kill rare and unique monsters. So you're going to go through the Headsman and Bane of Legends tree on your Ascendancy to get that 20% more damage against unique enemies, and kill enemies that have 20% or lower life when hit by your skills. That Culling Strike is huge, and I'm going to be doing the Merciless Lab any day now as soon as it's an easy one. In terms of the actual hotbar, it's interesting to note that it's completely full. There is no room for much of anything else, and that's why I am sucking up my sockets with passive defensive measures like the Vengeance, like a little cast when damage taken setup, and a bunch of auras, just because if you want to be toggling your auras, there's no room for almost anything else. So look towards in the future if there's some kind of alternate skill bar added, or you may want to do a weapon swap setup where you change your skills out, because that is some new tech that they added. But apart from that, you are mostly gated on how many buttons you have available for your defensive measures. I have to switch out my Stone Golem for my Blood Rage every time I want to summon this guy, because I don't want to use a low-level Stone Golem. And I believe that is it. Final thing to note is these Fortify nodes are nice, because you're taking Fortify, of course. And then I'm wondering if these aren't the next nodes that I'm going to take. To amplify the effect and the uptime of my guard skills. So that includes Molten Shell, and it also is going to include Steel Skin and Immortal Call if you want to use those instead of Molten Shell. But I think Molten Shell is absolutely perfect for this build. If you're taking Iron Reflexes and stacking armor, Molten Shell makes you effectively unkillable during its duration. It's ridiculous. As this shows, I did kill Oak for the fizz reduction and the fizz damage, but it would probably be better just to kill Oak to get the 2 nodes and to spend those on crit. There's plenty of crit all around. I'd probably recommend killing all the bandits, honestly. Thanks for watching, and check it out whenever I get around to doing another character, probably next league in 3 months. Thank you.